When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to this blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Warning, creators of this game do understand the subject matter may be offensive to some, but they do honor the families and people that have been affected by these real-life tragedies that these individuals have caused. Want to play a game?
Oh, yeah!
Lover of true crime?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, we got an interesting game for you to check out.
Wow.
With the mashup of influences such as horror movies, collecting cards, and RPGs.
What?
Led to giving birth to an incredible creation of this game, Killers, the card game.
You are all my children now.
This game is a collectible trading card game featuring some of the most infamous killers, with tidbits of trivia on the back of each card to help you learn some insight to each criminal.
Who the hell are you?
Let's not forget, during the game, cops will be chasing you and these criminals.
I'm a cop, you idiot!
However, check out their website listed through all social media today, which can be found under Killers, the card game.
Am I on the internet?
I want to play a game.
Hi, it's Joe Blanton, former MLB pitcher, current wine owner. You're listening to Crazy Train Radio.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, the Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. Well, ladies and germs, boys and girls, this next guest is certainly living the American dream and has lived the American dream. Not only has he been a professional baseball player, but now he has his own winery. We'll get into everything. Joe Blanton, how the hell are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. Nobody listens when you bitch. But, you know, I tongue-in-cheek say about the American dream, but, you know, it's... Did you ever think a kid from Kentucky would not only play pro ball, but now doing what you're doing with Selah Wines?
Selah Wines, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I no, absolutely not. I mean, you grow up like everybody else, you know. Everybody that plays in the big leagues does, you know, for the most part. There's small towns, big cities, you name it. There is no one path, but it's a path that for me, I was fortunate to keep on. That path kept going and going till I eventually got to the big leagues. You just kind of take it one step at a time. I mean, I know that's very cliche, right? One step at a time, but literally, I guess. And, I have 3 younger kids now that they're not, the oldest one just got in high school, but you start thinking back, well, do they want to go to that level and start looking? The information now is so much different. Trying to think about that versus us. We just played to play. And if you got to go to high school and play, you got to go to high school and play. If you got to go to college, you got to go to college. There was no, real thinking about your future and so much information like there is today. So it's definitely that path back then was way different than it is now.
And, being, like you said, the information's there, but it's at the fingertips of our kids and all that stuff at this point with the cell phones.
There's so much information at their fingertips. It's unbelievable.
How scary is that for you as a dad, having 3 kids with access to the internet, and where you and me are kind of close in age, but it's like we were on the first full generation of the internet per se.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those that's one of the, as my kids start getting older, one of the tougher jobs as a parent is being able to control that and, kind of hold the innocence, if you will, without having them be behind if everybody else is doing it, if you will. But as far as information goes, I mean, I think I had this conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago. Think about when we were kids and you wanted to know, what a star really was, or I don't know, just make up any information. You ask your parents, and it was either they told you what they knew, or it was I don't know, or maybe something was made up. Where now it's you literally just you grab your phone, you type it in, and you go, okay, here's the exact information. So there's good and bads to all of it. But there's just so much information out there these days, and it just depends on which path you take it. It's crazy.
Absolutely. So, obviously, before we get into the baseball and all that fun stuff, what led you to getting into the wine business?
To alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
Good question. Actually, baseball led me into wine business. Funny enough, obviously the path it took. Growing up in Kentucky, for one, I grew up in a dry county. So, no liquor stores, no sales at grocery stores, anything like that.
They took the bar! The whole fucking bar!
So obviously where I grew up to where I am now is a very, very different path. Although both grew up small town farming community to this small town farming community, just a little bit different type. Go from soybeans, corn, and tobacco to basically it's grapes, which turn into wine, but, wine everywhere. But back to your question, it was baseball. As started progressing, got through the minor leagues, came up with the A's. For one, it's in Oakland, hour and a half here from Napa. I guess was in Oakland. Traveling around with the guys, we're when you're on the team, you're a close-knit family. We're together almost every day for 9 months out of the year. And you're traveling, guys are going out to eat, guys are going to go to steakhouses. Some of the, usually older guys are the ones that are taking us, the rookies, the younger guys, the veterans are, picking the restaurants and saying, come along, and going to steakhouses, and they're buying wine, and they're like, here's a glass of wine. You're like, I don't drink wine. I'm on a Coors Light diet or whatever it is. And they're like, no, we're in a restaurant, this is, we're at a nice place, have a glass of wine. So that starts happening. And then as, about half a year goes by, we have an off day, a rare off day that happens in the big leagues where you actually have an off day at home. Usually off days that you see, roughly, I think they get a few more now, was 162 games, 180 days. Most of those, depending on where you're at, if not all of them, are travel days. So you're flying on your actual off day. we had one where we didn't. So me, a couple other younger guys decided, hey, let's get a car. Let's head up to Napa. It's an hour and a half away. It's an easy day trip. Let's go do something. We went to a couple different wineries, and I just remember, actually being, and I didn't have the love for wine then when I came. It was more just like, okay, it's a learning thing. We all learn as life goes on. And, being at these wineries and, tasting, wine and barrel, sitting there and having a glass of wine, overlooking the vineyard that it came out of. Also learning the different varieties and just the different nuances in it. It's just something sparked in doing it. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And then I started coming back more and more and more to where Napa became an annual place that I would come every November. So after the end of every season in November, we can't do October because we got to plan for the World Series. That thought's always in your head when you're making plans. And so that goes along, and it became my place to kind of get away from the season. It was that last vacation before training starts, before the throwing starts ramping up, getting ready for the next season. So just really kind of fell in love with it there. And that translates into that kind of passion and love for wine that I developed. So then when we start flying on planes and I became the veteran guy, I would, we're fortunate we fly private with some of the crazy hours we're flying, and, we carry a large squad of, trainers and reporters and coaches and players, fill up almost the whole plane. We're able to bring our own drink if we prefer. And so I would usually bring a bag of, a roller bag of some wine, and I would start sharing it with a couple guys, and that would grow into almost like wine groups we'd have on the planes, where we start drinking wine, talking about wine, doing tasting notes, which that really, that kind of progressed into, I really enjoy this. Maybe this could be some kind of a next step, when I'm done playing. So that's how baseball kind of led me into wine a little bit.
And obviously I've heard, because we know everything online is true.
Am I on the internet?
That
Yes.
you absolutely that you started taking college classes on winemaking, and you obviously oversee the operation, but do let the professionals be the professionals, if that makes sense.
100% true. Yeah. So when I was, so the more I get into it, and I started thinking, well, is this something I want to do? I want to say it was like around 2011 or so, was when I really started kind of diving into it. 2011, 12. And actually about then, I didn't buy a vineyard till 2014, January of 14, actually, so very starting the year. And I'd been looking for 2 years. And during those 2 years, I just started taking like online classes that are available to anybody online that's interested. Like UC Davis is a good one. They do online classes, and they have all kinds of different levels. And I was, I started reading books, and, when we would travel, we have the plane time or the downtime in a hotel. So I started, kind of diving into all this, and then just trying to grow my knowledge somewhat, and then bought the vineyard, was still playing. So I played until 17. So I had the vineyard 3 years, but I also look at it as what I wanted to do with wine was make a very high end wine, something that I personally enjoyed, something that I'm proud of having my name on, I can stand behind. And for me to do that with still playing, for one, unable to be here to make it. And also I don't have that skill set, as, especially then, and not now, even though I know more than now, to make that type of wine. So I looked into, what winemakers do I like? What do I enjoy? How, they make their wine, and also that kind of personal relationship developing with them, and, found one that kind of fits all of that. And that's, I know this one's out there because I've said it, that, when I got him, I'm not expecting him to come to me and say, oh, hey, why don't you try throwing your curveball different? It's not really working lately. kind of gave him the reins to run because I trust in what he does. And I almost tie that back into baseball as well when I look at it and say, what does a GM do? They do have their hands on it a little bit as far as if they, hire, let's say I compare him to a Cy Young pitcher. They're kind of going to sign them and let them do what they do because that's what they're good at. So that's kind of the almost way I look at it as the GM of the operation.
Well, and I'm not much of a wine person. I'm a whiskey guy and beer, and you hear different things about wine, but what would you say your wine of choice is? Because I hear that obviously people try to tie it in with, say, what you're mentioning earlier, what you're eating if you're out to dinner, or maybe you're watching a movie at home, or situation to situation. So what do you actually prefer if you're going to have a glass?
So I, with exactly what you just said, every situation calls for something different, and not even just wine. I mean, there's times where, it's Christmas time and, this is popping up because it was just here and, the tree's lit and, I'm watching TV and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'd rather have a glass of bourbon right now. It's not like I drink wine all the time. I, have my share, of course. But even wine wise, so I make Cabernet and 100% Cabernet. And that's, if you ask me if I could only pick one wine the rest of my life, that's what I would pick. But also there's different situations. If it's 100 degrees outside and, it's somebody wants some wine, it's probably going to be a white wine of some kind, or, depending on the food that's coming out, it might be tried to pair then. So it really goes depend. But at the end of the day, I make Cabernet, and Cabernet is kind of king in Napa. So at the end of the day, if I had to pick, that would be it.
Well, I'll have a link to the winery and all that fun stuff on outlets of this, but baseball. So obviously you mentioned you were with Oakland, and I know you were drafted first round, 24th overall, and it was around the same time that Michael Lewis's Moneyball was coming out. Did they talk to you much as far as when he was following that draft?
Actually, yeah. So that's interesting. So the book, my draft class was, I guess, known as the Moneyball draft class, where, the Moneyball, the movie, obviously Brad Pitt, portrays Billy Bean and so forth. The movie is pretty much just about the big league club, but the book is actually kind of a two-parted book where it talks about the big league club and the draft. So for the book wise, there wasn't much talk to us as far as that goes, because it was more of the draft process instead of what the player, if that makes sense. But he definitely was around. I don't know. I know that he did come around for a bit, and I know there was a couple times where I think he was thinking of a follow-up. I don't think it ever happened as far as the players, but I do know that his wife, Tabitha Lewis, formerly Tabitha Soren, she actually did a few things of her own about the draft class. So both of them would come around on occasion. She actually just came out with one. When did she come out with it? A couple of years ago. I don't know the exact date. I think the name of it's Fantasy Life or something. So her idea was talk about committed to something. So she would come around kind of the first year of the draft at like 2000. I think it was the fall of 12. Maybe we were all in Instructs that year, and she would do like photo shoots with us, a lot as a group, some individual, and then we would see her at periods along the way, here and there. But then 10 years down the road, she did a follow-up of the entire draft class, to where she photoed us again. And basically, so this book, it's like a photo book / I guess, Where Are They Now? So it goes through and it tells. So, there's a couple of us that are still playing. So it kind of has like what you looked like as a rookie versus now, like the transformation of the body of, an athlete from rookie to 10 years down the road. And also it plays into, what happens to everybody else. People kind of forget that, especially in baseball, right? There's, I don't know how many rounds there are now. There were 60 down to 30. I don't know. I feel like they keep changing rules on me and I can't even keep up with it. But so it had that in there where one of the guys that was one of our first runners was a coal miner. Another one is like sells insurance. Another one's a teacher. It has, kind of what they're doing 10 years down the road. So it's that was very interesting. So they did come around quite a bit, and that was actually a cool project to see, kind of the progression of guys 10 years down the road through this Moneyball draft.
Yeah, I'll have to. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her or have had any contact with her, but I have a relationship with Gene Fruth, who's a world-known baseball photographer, and she has a couple photo books out, which are very interesting. The one I'm actually seeing on my shelf now is called Grassroots. Like that book in particular has Hall of Famers tell their stories, and they go to these different towns. Like I remember the one chapter of, say, Hank Aaron from Mobile, Alabama. He did like a passage, and using the photos and just having paragraphs from different guys was pretty cool. So,
yes, yeah, that's always interesting because we see sports. I think everybody does it at any sport. You kind of once you're gone, if that makes sense. Like there is no, what are they doing now? Which I, sometimes can be very interesting, the life that guys take on after, because at the entirety of it, sports is, whether it's baseball or basketball, football, whatever it is it's such a huge part of you because it's kind of what people, maybe know you for, no matter what your level is, right? If you're from a small town, you're good in high school and that's all you played. People remember you as being, the state game in high school, and that may be all you did, but that's, it's such a huge part, but it's such a short time in your life. So it is interesting to see that what people do kind of after that.
Well, you mentioned how much time you guys spend together, and people don't think about it because you travel together, you get hotels together, you eat together, just everything that goes with it, from February till at least the end of September and into October, like you mentioned, if you're playoffs, World Series, and all that stuff. So obviously there's got to be, and I know some of the older guys. I'm in the Philadelphia area, but it's like I remember guys like a Sparky Lyle, who was a Cy Young pitcher and all, would tell me some of the practical jokes they would do, lighting shoelaces and just stuff you probably couldn't get away with now. Just
exactly. Too many cameras.
But were you guys practical jokers to relieve some of the monotony of what you were doing? How did you guys, or at least you, handle the day-to-day grind of being a professional athlete?
Yeah, so that's every kind of person, every team has their own whatever it is, right? And kind of what you had mentioned, like the older guys, some things they would do, they were able to do it in the dugout at the games, or out in public, or as when I came in the league. Oh shit, I'm dating myself right now. There wasn't camera phones yet, I don't believe.
And Sparky, I'm sorry, don't call me saying I was throwing you under the bus. I'm sorry, buddy, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't think there was camera phones. 04, 05 was my first 2 years. 06, so then they started coming around. So then teams started having meetings in spring training, like, hey guys, some of the things we've been doing, we can't do anymore. People are taking, and then it turned into, hey, you guys got to completely cut everything out because they take a picture and it's available to everybody within 30 seconds. So a lot of the things you're mentioning, the practical jokes and things like that start kind of going away. And then, when they did happen, they were looked at as, oh, it's fun. And then, obviously, depending on which city you play in, the seriousness of the games and what level you're trying to, win a World Series, or the amount of money that's being paid, especially now. It's like, oh, how can these guys joke around at their job? Which I think is ridiculous, because we got to have fun, right? You're adults playing a kid's game. You got to make it fun. I mean, yes, every guy out there does take it serious, but at the same time, if you're not having fun at your job, then it makes it a lot more rough. But yeah, everybody has their own way. And, that changes for everybody and every team. Definitely when I was with Philly, we had our jokesters, Brett Myers. Definitely was one of those that liked to have fun, in the clubhouse. Ryan Metz and these guys were definitely kept a lot of things light, kept us laughing. But that's all stuff like, behind closed doors a little bit. Some of it's not. I think I just saw one pop up with Brett the other day. This was, I think, the year before I got there, where Kyle Kendrick, he pulled the joke on him about him getting traded to the hot dog champion, Japan. I mean, that's just hilarious. Like, that's the kind of stuff he would do. And, to be able to come up with that, pull that whole thing off, it's hilarious. In spring training, sometimes that's what's needed. You're kind of back out there, and, you're jumping back in the grind. And sometimes even that was spring training, but sometimes even in season, that's what you need. You're on a 5-game skid, where it's hard now because people are like, oh, you're losing 5 games. How come you're joking around? And it's like, sometimes that's what it needs. That's what people don't understand. Everything's under such a microscope these days. And then mine progressed into, as I got older, like I said, wine was my getaway. It was, doing tastings on a plane, and then, maybe taking a class, to where those couple hours in a hotel before I head to the field was my kind of like, I didn't have to think about whatever it was that day, as I was able to get away for a little bit.
And at the time you were traded to Philly from Oakland, it was 5-12 record, almost a 5 ERA, but you were known as a workhorse and innings eater. So coming from a town like Oakland, and yeah, there's that whole thing with the move and all you referenced earlier. But what was it like coming to Philadelphia and that playoff team at that point, which ended up, you guys went on to win the World Series in 2008 there?
I mean, obviously that worked out really well for me. That was a great trade. But in all honesty, like, starting in Oakland wasn't, it worked out well for me personally, and for a lot of guys at that time. Oakland is an organization that, it's not like I'm throwing a shocker out there. They're known to trade a lot of guys off. Guys move pretty quick through the system. They come up, they don't sign guys to deals. So it's not a huge market. So it was almost like it teaches you to become a big leaguer without getting thrown into, obviously, the two organizations you mentioned, Oakland and Philly, very different markets, crowd differences, expectations, very, very different, right? But they're both playing the same game. So one, you got this big media present, the other is not as much. One expected to win a World Series. So the pressure to succeed right away in Philly is way, way greater than it is in Oakland, where you kind of come up and you're allowed to kind of get your feet wet, kind of get settled a little bit. If you don't start out that great, I remember I started off my rookie year, I think it was like 0-5 with like a 6 or something. You started that with the Yankees, the Phillies, the Red Sox, you're out, you're back down. Like, see you later. But I actually got a chance to stay up, and I started that year off really well. I had like a 1-something through a month, and then completely went to shit after that. And then, but was able to completely turn around, finish the year with like a 3.5, going 12-12 after starting like 0-5 or 0-6, whatever it was. So, and then that gave me that confidence to keep going. And with that being traded over to Philly, I had that confidence of like, okay, I'm a big leaguer. I know how to handle everything. Really allowed me to, even though, like you just said, I was kind of struggling over in Oakland at the time. It was kind of that start of a tough period. When I first came up, we actually had some pretty decent teams, 05, 06. 06, we beat Minnesota in the first round of the playoffs, go on. We had big name players. And then everything kind of started getting like sold off, like sometimes they do. But getting traded to Philly, all the guys were awesome, and everybody knew they wanted to win. There was that common goal, so that was almost like a breath of fresh air going somewhere to where, even though there was that pressure to win, I was fine with it. It was great. That's what I wanted. It's what every big leaguer wants, is to win a World Series. So getting thrown in that situation was awesome. And then, obviously the team, the way we gelled and bonded was just made it even easier.
How long do you think it took you to adjust being to, because playing the game is one thing, getting adjusted to being in a new locker room with a bunch of new guys you don't know and coaching staff and just, certain things you weren't familiar with, but obviously you're jumping head on there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's, I think, what sometimes a lot of people don't understand. And, there is no right way to approach it, wrong way to approach it. And some guys thrive after a trade because it's a, kind of like I said, like a new breath of air. And some guys might struggle a little, and it's not necessarily because they can't handle it. It just sometimes happens, but even things people don't think about. And God, I forget who told me this. I want to say it was Rick Monday. He was announcing with LA when I got traded from there. And we were talking how I handled the trade when I got traded from Philly to LA. And we started talking about just exactly what you're talking about, how the locker room is different. You go from Oakland, which not very updated locker room, to Philly, brand new park, all the amenities, there's things people don't even understand that kind of sometimes don't make sense. Like, obviously you're going to a new city. You're first off living out of a hotel, trying to your first, obviously if it's on the road or home, doesn't matter. When you go there, you're in a hotel, you're trying to figure out a new place to live. Every day you're headed to the park for 12 hours. If you have a family or not, that makes life more different. Now they're somewhere else. You're here. If they were with you, with not. And then even like tiny little things, like I went from Oakland with white cleats to Philly with red, and they got traded there, Dodgers with blue. Everything kind of looks weird for a minute, right? You may have a pair of cleats that you broke in that are comfortable or whatever it may be. Now it's completely new, other than the clubhouse. But when I go to that, all of those things, they don't affect your performance, but they are things that are different, right? A new path to the field every day. Your car's back in Oakland. You're, getting, you have nothing with you but a suitcase you're living out of for a month, trying to get your stuff out. But in that, for me, the actual locker room of the Phillies was such a good locker room that it made the transition very easy. And I got traded over, and right off the top of my head, I don't think I had played with anybody that was on that team. I was a little bit younger, I think fourth year. As you get older, that happens. It's more rare that you haven't played with anybody. But as I progressed and got traded, usually there was at least one or two guys I had played with before. So you have a little bit of a common bond, but there was nobody. But I remember, for me, the specific moment of I got traded over All-Star break. I was in my home in Nashville at the time, and they were opening up in Florida against the Marlins. And I happened to fly in. I missed the first game because of the trade when I was flying in. And when I landed and I go to the hotel, the team had just got back from the first game. Like I said, I missed the first one. And so they were all coming in off the bus. And it was at least half of them, if not more, came up to me and, said, hello, hey, glad to have you. And I didn't know any of them. So that's really like talking about taking you in right there, right? That makes a difference, gives you that kind of comfort level out of the gate. But that was a special group to where not every trade happens like that.
Right on. And obviously in that World Series, people remember, I'm going to play the audio clip from Game 4. You hit a home run, bottom fifth, 2-1 pitch, 15th pitcher to hit a home run like that. I believe it was Ken Holtzman in '74 to hit in Game 4 as well.
Yep.
What was that
Coincidentally,
like for you? Obviously,
with the A's.
Yeah. What's that like for you to hit? Say, I got a home run in a World Series.
I mean, it's definitely, gosh, it's a moment that like it's kind of so unexpected, right? Where like, oh, if you win a game in the World Series, it's like, oh, I've been prepping for this ever since I became a pitcher, right? Or if like a hitter hits one, like, yeah, it's awesome. It's in the World Series, but that's what you've been training to do, right? To even if like it's a moment that, you know, only a few people have done, but it's what you've been training to do. It's what you've been shooting for, right? That other than when I was a kid and playing wiffle ball in the backyard or, you know, whatever it was, that wasn't a moment that I was training for. So it was kind of like I hate to say it was like, I mean, it is an accidental moment. You're right. Like a kind of like a luck moment, if you will. I came from college. So I hit my last year of high school in '99, go to college. I didn't hit minor leagues. I didn't hit, came up in the American League. There wasn't as much interleague then. There was a little bit. So maybe had a handful of at bats in the past from, you know, in the past 8 years going up to that. So going over the National League, now having to hit almost every game, you know, was a new learning experience. You're going from, you know, trying to hit small town Kentucky pitching to hitting big league pitching is a big jump, and you hadn't touched a bat in 8 years. So, but you know, it's definitely a special moment for sure that, you know, it's out there. It's very cool to, you know, when you see it again, and, you know, it's definitely a rememberable moment.
The 2-1 is hit well into left. How about Blanton going deep? Unbelievable. You have to go back to 1974. Kenny Holtzman, the last pitcher to hit a home run. Blanton is now the 15th.
Joe Blanton's first at bat as a Philly, he had a hit. And his last at bat as a Philly, he's had a hit.
Obviously, and I don't want to keep you on the line for a super long time, but obviously, fast forward a few years, you were the fifth starter for the 2011 team when you had the four aces. You know, you had Oswald and Holiday and Lee back and coming back, and just that. It was funny because when I was refreshing my memory, and I know I'll get emails and texts and all that. Hey, but you're an Orioles fan, which is true. As a fan standpoint, grew up with the Orioles, love them, Cal Ripken, all that fun stuff. But when I was going back and reading everything, that media requests were so crazy. They ended up having the first press conference with all you guys on Valentine's Day of all. How ironic, the love for you guys. But what was it like being with that many studs for pitching? But was it then during that press conference that there was a funny moment between you and a reporter who forgot you were with the 08 team?
It was. Yeah, and I know exactly what you're talking about. You know what? That was actually I got 2 or 3 stories off of that.
Please.
It was a great, great group to be a part of, first off. Outside of how good those guys were on the field, the quality of people that rotation was. Unfortunately, I wound up getting hurt. I didn't pitch for most of the year. I had some elbow issues that I just never could overcome. So Vance Worley stepped in. He was unbelievable for the whole year. But starting off that group, here's a story, and I think I've told this one before somewhere or put it out there somewhere, and I think I did it when he got in the Hall of Fame. So Roy Halladay,
okay,
they Sports Illustrated wanted to do, so lucky enough, because of being in that group, I've did what every kid, when we grew up and we're playing sports, what do we want to do? Be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, right? So luckily enough, with being a part of that group, was able to do that. And I'm realist enough that I know it had nothing to do with me, right? It's with those other four, but they come in and they say, hey, we want to put you guys on the cover. We want to put you four on the cover. Like you said, the four aces, and Roy Halladay, I think that was his first year, I believe, with Philly.
Yeah.
And he, they approached it to us, and, they told him, we want you four guys. Roy told him, he said no. And they're thinking, well, I guess he just doesn't want to do it. And he said, no, we're not a staff of four. We're a staff of five. He's the only way I'm doing it is if the whole rotation does it. So that, if that tells you something right there, and I've told that story for just that's, and the whole group was like that. And once he said it, the rest of three were like, oh yeah, they weren't like, Roy, come on. Like, this is what they want to do. It's no big deal. They were like, oh yeah, 100%. We're a staff of five. He goes, he's going to make up, 20% of our starts this year. He's as much a part. He's going to, if I throw 33 starts, he's going to throw 33 as well. He's as much a part of it as all of us. We're a team. This is not the way we do it. He made that, kind of clear from the start. And that what was special about all those guys is that's the kind of people they were, away from who they were on the field. So I thought that one was great. And then with what the story you're talking about, so we start off and it's first couple of days of spring training. And honestly, they could have wanted the same thing, those four guys, but it wound up being all five of us. And retrospect, and even that day, I completely understand. Those four guys were all the attention and much, much warranted, right? Cole's he's the youngest one, been a World Series MVP already, in Cy Young talks. Roy Oswalt for what he had done multiple times in the top five in Cy Young, just getting him over. Roy Halladay already won a Cy Young over in the American League, established as one of the best pitchers. Cliff Lee, exactly the same. Cy Young winner, coming back. Accolades for these guys for days, multiple All-Stars, you name it. So the interview goes on, and, they're talking about the expectations now that this rotate winning a World Series, which, we come into Philly. That was the expectation when I got there. The whole time I was there, it was to win a World Series. It wasn't get to the playoffs. It wasn't win the division. It was win the World Series. That was what we had planned every year. And a reporter asked Cole, hey, what's it like with, being up here with the two Roys and Cliff, and, those two have won Cy Youngs, and, but you're the youngest one up here and the only one that has won a World Series. And Cole's getting ready to answer, and I kind of lean up and I was like, I'm up here too. I won one. And like I said it joking. I didn't say it like meaning to like call him
being
out.
A dick about it.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be a dick about it. I was trying to like joke around about it. Like I said, I understand where my place was in this group, right? We all do. And the guy he was a super nice reporter, so it wasn't like he was a dick reporter that I was trying to call out. He apologized to me so many times. I was like, look, I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. I was like, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I was like, I'm trying to make a joke of it that I know who these guys are, but we're here for the same goal. So yeah, that was kind of a funny moment, but the good news, I don't think he ever gave me a bad report after that.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sitting here. You saw the bookshelf before my video cut out, and whatnot, but I'm looking at the Todd Zelinski book, Doc. And it's a shame that he didn't get to live to see the Hall of Fame and such.
Yeah.
Because, have you ever been up there to the Hall of Fame? But also, what kind of guy was Doc to deal with?
So I haven't been to the Hall of Fame.
Oh my God, you got to go.
Yeah, I know. My son is 11 now. He just turned 11 a couple months ago. So he's kind of at that age, and he plays that it's kind of about that time to take a trip. But he's also, I know that Cooperstown has a big tournament every year.
Yep.
like not a little league tournament, but like other tournaments. So hopefully when I can get him with a team or start a team or whatever it is where we can eventually play in that, and then that's when I'll take him. That would be a awesome trip. But Doc, what kind of guy was Doc? So I think the story I told just a minute ago about when they wanted to, you know, put us on Sports Illustrated and what he said, I think I could stop there, and that tells what kind of person he was.
Yeah.
But, you know, like a couple other stories, like behind the scenes top stories, and I'm sure this has been told. I remember when he threw the perfect game in Miami. I actually rode with him in the cab that day. So that's a funny one. You know, those moments when you're with somebody that does something special earlier. So I ride with him in the cab that day, and we're standing there, and when Doc pitched, he pitched. And I played with him and Kershaw, and they were both very similar on days they pitched. Funny enough, two of the greatest pitchers I've played with. They're guys like you don't really talk to on the days they pitched. And that doesn't make them bad people, because every other day you could. It's just the day
they're just zoned in.
They're zoned in, and every guy was different. Like Max Scherzer's like that also. But when I played with Cliff, and I could probably name a couple other like guys that won Cy Young, possible Hall of Fame, they would be talking to everybody like 30 minutes before their start, messing around, like staying loose. Everybody has their own way of getting in a zone, right? Some people like to keep themselves relaxed. Some people, you know, are that. So Doc was that. So I remember riding in a cab, 30-minute cab ride, and I think I just like scooted all the way against the door, like staring out the door like, oh, don't say anything. Like, I don't want to throw him off his zone today. And my locker was beside him in Philly. Like, our lockers were next to each other. And so I knew that's the way it was, and you respect it. You know, when guys get to that level, everybody respects that focus that they bring, and they kind of let them do their thing that day. But we get to the field, obviously he goes out, throws the perfect game. You know, we come back in, you know, everybody's, you know, hugging, high-fiving, the whole deal, trying to celebrate, and Doc stops everybody from celebrating. You know, somebody stops the celebration and kind of like, you know, speech or something. Somebody maybe found a bottle of champagne, like, oh, open it, celebrate this. And he goes, and Doc goes, well, he goes, I don't know if I should be the one speaking. I think Chooch, Carlos Ruiz, should be. He goes, this game was because of him. He goes, he was awesome today. And like mentioned the defense, that, you know, I couldn't have done it. So like the first things out of his mouth were Ruiz and the team, that, you know, he thanked all of them for being able to do it. Not, oh, you know what, guys, you know, I was on today in any of that. It was everybody else. So
yeah, that don't say who the guy was.
Yeah, those are for me, those are two stories of like the person Doc was. Because I think you can look at his body of work and you can watch games he threw, throwing a no-hitter in the playoffs, you know, multiple Cy Youngs, you know, Hall of Fame, all that. And that tells you what kind of player he was. You know, and definitely I kind of went into it with the intensity level that he played with as well was definitely unmatched.
Yeah. And I only met him one time, probably like 6 months before he passed as a fan. And he seemed like a very quiet guy. Nice and cordial and all, but he was quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very quiet. Yeah, for sure. One of the more quiet guys on the team, for sure. He was a very and I think there's two ways a player can do it, to be a leader, if you will. And him and Chase were very similar as like a lead by example guys. Very quiet at the field. They didn't say a whole lot to anybody. If they said something, you listen, because they didn't talk much. When you're done, where you're with other guys, and it's like, you know, Jimmy was more outspoken. You know, Howie, I mentioned Brett earlier. Like guys like that are more kind of the outspoken people on a team, where those guys kind of led by example.
Absolutely. And to put a bow on this, and make sure you guys check out the links for the winery and all that fun stuff. But when people talk about you, whether it's the playing career or however they bring your name up, how do you think you'll be remembered?
It's a good question. Never thought about that one before. I think I think it's kind of what we talked about earlier, hitting a home run in World Series. I think that's the first instant moment, is that, because that was such a big moment. But that's like a moment, not a career, if you will. But I think that's the first thing people remember and think about. But if I could say, and I was traveling this year, and I was lucky enough to be considered, actually, with Frank Thomas, who I played with, and Todd Walker and Todd Lilliquist, the SEC. So we all played in the SEC, and they did a thing at the SEC tournament where they consider us SEC legends, and we all threw out a first pitch and kind of had a big thing. And when I was down there, my agent was there, and I took my son with me, and we were all sitting at a game talking. And I think he said it best. He said it to my son, actually, that he said, if you're half as tough as your dad, you'll be just fine. And I feel like for me, that's what it was. I was able to, although I brought up where I may had some DL time, but I took pride in so many years, like not getting on the DL. I played my whole career without a surgery, playing through a lot of things that hurt, and didn't just go on the DL to go on the DL because I didn't feel good or whatever, like going out there. And also for me, like the ability to, like, I had to make adjustments in my career, switching to the bullpen for the last 3 or 4 years, long reliever, then wound up as, kind of like a setup guy in LA, kind of doing what it takes to stick around. And, people ask me, oh, what was your best pitch when, and I'm like, I don't know. They were like, what do you mean you don't know? I was like, I came into the league as, I was 94, 95, 96, like 4-seam. A's didn't want that. They wanted sinker changeup. So I developed into that kind of guy. I go to Philly, everybody's throwing a cutter. So I learned to throw a cutter. After being four-seam curveball heavy, I was cutter, changeup, cold through a changeup, but that was the big things in Philly. And then, after I left there, I had to transfer the bullpen, and slider became my best weapon. So I was able to kind of change and adjust to be able to stick around and be able to continue playing. If I had to pick, that's kind of what I would pick.
And this just came up as you were saying that. What is the mentality of, you were a starter for so many years, but then you made the switch to a reliever? Is there a different mentality for how you approach the game?
There was. Whereas a starter, it's like this big buildup for one day. And then it's like a reset. And it's just this constant, like, you're climbing this for this build. Everything is in preparation for this day, right? The day after you pitch is in preparation for the next day. The day before, all the days in between, everything is in preparation for this big day. Where as a reliever, you're funny. You're kind of like this forgotten person that sometimes they just throw in there. You feel like, because you got to be ready every day. It's like, hey, well, I don't care you threw yesterday or the day before. You're out there, you're going to throw. There is, so there's more of like a be ready to go every day. The way you approach hitters for me was different. Starters, there was kind of this little, especially then, I don't think as much now, holding something back for the second or third through the lineup. So being able to have that starting career and going to the bullpen, having multiple weapons to go to, and I didn't have to hold any of them back. It was like, oh, wait, this is nice. I can just go right after him. But then as it progressed, and I became like a setup guy, so that's where even in the bullpen, it becomes different. Being a long guy versus a setup guy, you're ready from the first to the fifth innings as like a long guy. After that goes by, that was when I was with the Royals, first to the fifth innings, I was like on mental standpoint, ready to go. And then that fifth or sixth hits, and it's kind of like, you don't cash out because you could never know what happens, but you kind of relax a little bit more. We got a 1 to 3 run lead. They're passing the ball off to Greg Holland, Wade Davis, Kelvin Herrera, and I ain't touching the ball. So, they're the ones that are doing it versus transition to LA. I'm like 7th, 8th inning guy that changes. First couple innings, I'm not so ready. And I am in that other, but also you're facing a team the first day, you're winning by 2 runs, you pitch. facing 2, 3, 4. Well, you know what? If I'm facing Buster Posey, well, back then they were in division with the Dodgers, Buster Posey, Paul Goldschmidt, these guys that are the 3, 4 hitters. It's like, I'm facing them with a 3-run lead with nobody on. Maybe I don't show them so many sliders today. Maybe I kind of stay a little bit fastball heavy. I can hold that in my back pocket. So if I face them the next 2 days, now I can bust it out, because if they get a hit, not the end of the world. But if I face them tomorrow and I've got the tying run on second in the 8th inning and with 1 out and they're up, that's going to mean a lot more if they get a hit than today. So there's that kind of game within the game where you play stuff different.
And you just stole the line I was going to say, because I've been doing this since 2012, and early on I got to talk to Jason Kendall, who was an awesome catcher. And
Jason was my catcher when I came up to the big league.
Yeah.
He was my not my first catcher, but as a rookie, he was my catcher for probably, because he played every day, right? He played as a catcher. He was playing 140 something games out of 160, with backup catchers never touching the field. So he was catching all my starts. I learned so much from him, being a rookie pitcher and having him as a veteran catcher.
And he uses that line, the game within the game. And Jason is a guy, if you want to talk and learn the game, Jason is one of those guys who will teach you so much and you don't even realize it.
100%. Yeah, he's one of my favorite teammates. And actually, he's I don't know if he still is in the front office with Kansas City. So when I got traded over to Kansas City, he's one of the first guys I saw. And he was like, I told him to bring you over. Because we're of the kind of that same cut from the same cloth, same mindset, more quiet guys, like tough guys. Like, and he was like, they asked me, because I played, and he goes, I don't care what's going on. He's going to, and that goes back to what you asked, that's what I wanted my teammates to think. He goes, I don't care what's going on. He's going to step up and give it his best every day. And he goes, that's how I sold you to them. And I was like, appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, Jason's a good dude. I enjoy to communicate with him. He's great. Yeah. But
one of the ultimate gamers.
Oh, absolutely. And if you get a chance to read his book, it's awesome. But
I didn't even know he had one.
Yes, I'll send you a link for it.
Yeah.
I will get that over to you. But Joe Blanton, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey there, Friday fans. We know how much you enjoy the movies. Enjoy grabbing your Friday merchandise and interacting with the Friday family, whether it be at conventions or during our particular watch-alongs. Well, when you're looking to get yourself masks, why not check out our friends over at Camp Blood Customs out of New York State and order your specific custom mask from any of the films. All orders are made specifically. Your needs and wants are. Make sure you find Camp Blood Customs on Facebook, Instagram, and all over social media and order yours today.
Hi, this is Jamie Moyer, and you're listening to Crazy Train Radio.